You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. This episode is sponsored by Demand Derivatives, a startup futures exchange and clearinghouse trading the world's major assets in a creative new way. You already trade on an exchange. Here is your chance to own one. Before they approach large strategic partners for funding, the pioneering team at Demand Derivatives launched a crowdfunding portal so that regular traders have the chance to buy shares. Learn more and become a part of this revolutionary fintech project now at demandderivatives.com/crowdfunding. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Monday. It is time to kick off a new year here on the Crypto Rundown program. Hopefully, the year that is 2021, a little bit less exciting, maybe, at least from an overall societal perspective than the year that was 2020. A lot in the rear view mirror. We're going to get to all that a little bit later on. Maybe on the end of the show, maybe we'll cut it out and do a separate little episode breaking down the top 5 episodes that you guys really tuned into en masse over the year that was 2020 on the Crypto Rundown. Before we get to that, we got to break down the madness that is popping off right now. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you yet again, if you like what you hear at this program, anything we do on this network, make sure you keep those reviews coming. And also, if you're a lot of the newcomers to this show who maybe aren't that familiar with options, check out some of the other educational-oriented programming we have on the network. Options Playbook Radio, Options Bootcamp, 2 shows that are aimed squarely at you. They'll explain things like open interest and SKEW and volatility, all these terms we throw around on this show because we assume you understand them. They'll explain them to you in a lot more detail over there on those programs. And, of course, we do love to hear from you guys. So if you have questions, and who doesn't these days, hit us up. We do love to hear from you guys. And now, without further ado, let's dive right on to it. We got to kick it off. It's a crazy kickoff to the year, listeners. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody. New year, new Bitcoin breakdown. And we thought maybe might be a sleepy start to the new year. We thought, hey, maybe we'll just put out our top 5 episode, give us a nice week to recuperate here from the madness of 2020 and start things off in earnest again next week. But you know what? The crypto markets decided not to play ball. Bitcoin and ETH in particular deciding, I think the technical term is blow the doors off this past week. So we had to come at you with yet another live quick hit here, breaking down all the madness, the volume, the volatility, the OI, the SKEW, all this insanity going on out there. Let's kick it off. A week ago on the show, Bitcoin was a meager 27,111 on the show. And today, coming into today's show, 31,129. So huge rally over the course of the past week. And in fact, it got up much higher intra-week. It broke through 34,000 briefly over the week. I think it got up to about 34,300 over there. And once it got up to those levels, it seemed like the worm started turning out there, gave up a lot of those highs. Sold off about 10% now from those levels, down over about 4% today as well. So massive rally, pretty immediate swing. You know, it's volatility. It's what we've gotten used to out here in the Bitcoin markets these days. And yet another week, more of that on display. Speaking of volatility, let's break it down again. All these stats coming at you courtesy of our friends over there at Genesis Volatility. If you like what you hear on the show, maybe you thank them by heading on over to gvol.io. That's pretty easy, gvol.io, and you try the free trial. It's pretty easy. It's interesting stuff if you're interested in all things crypto analytics. You want to dip your toes in them there derivatives waters of the crypto. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you just trade the spot, but you want to know more about what's going on from an options perspective. Because remember, it is showing you what's going on from a SKEW perspective, a volatility, OI. All these things are useful and informative when you're trading the underlying as well. gvol.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. They break it down in interesting ways, like in the hourly volatility, which is a fascinating way to look at it. And we saw certainly quite an aggressive peak yesterday over there on DEREBIT. Remember, most of these metrics coming at you from the DEREBIT order book. You can choose different ones over there at GVol. We choose DEREBIT because it is the biggest dog out there. So on DEREBIT, the hourly vol peaked at about 106.6 yesterday and kind of the height of the rally and then sell off there. Our last show, of course, it was at 82%, 82.25%. So we saw a big increase since our last show. And then coming into today's show, it has dropped a little bit from those elevated levels of yesterday, but not a lot. It's just a little bit shy of 100% right now, 99.87%. So that is a very volatile asset class we're talking about. Let's go on out to the 1 hour SKEW, that strip of SKEW. They call it the 30-20 SKEW, showing you kind of the entire strip of options there going from 30 delta down to 20 delta. Again, if you don't know what that means, Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio, the place for you. That SKEW peaked actually before yesterday. It peaked on Saturday at 17.2. On our last show, it was 8.25, so big move from them. And then coming into today's show, it has come off again from Saturday. It's down to about 10 right now. So not that far from where it was this time last week after this enormous swing we saw intra-week in Bitcoin, particularly over the weekend. Open interest, again, they also break it down hourly, which is fascinating. You can't do that in the traditional listed options market. You can't go to OCC and say, give me the OI by hour. They're going to say, what are you talking about? You're a crazy person. But in the crypto realm, you can. And if you look at it that way, you'll see some interesting stuff. The OI, it peaked back last year. Remember, there's a lot of OI packed into that December expiration. That peaked at about 238,000 right at the end of the year, and that all came off the board with December expiration. So last week, the OI hourly was much lighter. It's about 174,000. It has gained a decent amount of that back now. It's about 198,000, still off that peak, about 40,000 contracts below that peak we saw back around Christmas time of last year. But again, it has been a nice resurgence as we've seen more interest in these contracts as a result of the massive explosion in all things Bitcoin. Speaking of open interest, let's look at the total notional value of the contracts we're talking about now. Again, not my favorite way to break down any sort of derivatives market, but that's the way it's done in crypto. So c'est la vie. It's kind of the lingua franca of crypto derivatives. And it's been threatening to break through 5 billion total not that long ago. Then it hit 6 billion towards again, aggregated across all the venues, including DEREBIT, back in December. Then it broke through $6 billion, got to about $7 billion. Then it all came off the board at the end of December, and now closing in total combined OI across all the venues now at about $8 billion, just a tick below it there. So huge amounts of OI across the board. DEREBIT, of course, leading the dance, $6.6 billion. Then we've got actually coming in at number 2 is OKEX, $550 million, followed by Bit.com, actually, $399 million. Then CME, number 4, $300 million. Then we got Huobi at a nice little, actually take it back, LedgerX at about $127 million. Then Huobi at about $9.5 million. And of course, a whopping goose egg still there for the folks over at BAKKT. If you wonder how that OI breaks down, calls to puts, it is about 119,000 on the call ledger and 79,000 on the put ledger. Calls usually lead the dance out here in crypto land. Right now, it's actually a little bit closer than I would have thought given the recent resurgence. I think the sell-off we saw immediately after that probably given some love to the puts out there. In terms of volume, you can probably guess it was kind of off the hook over the course of the past week. A very literally crazy start to the week. We were talking back on the 17th on the show with the folks at Genesis, I believe, about hitting numbers out there on DEREBIT of about 1.1 billion worth of notional volume going up. And that seemed like that was the all-time high. We blew through that this past week. We actually hit that number again on the 3rd, so over the weekend, 1.1 billion. On the 2nd, we actually hit 1.5 billion, so a new all-time high in terms of notional daily volume out there on DEREBIT. And today, so far, coming into showtime, closing in on 1 billion again, about 960 million on the tape as of showtime. So just crazy, crazy times. If you're wondering, I like contract volume a little bit more. Something's a little more interesting and a little bit more salient. And on the 1.1 billion amount that we saw going up there in terms of the 3rd, that was about 42,000 contracts going up as well. So that gives you a little bit of frame of reference for how much is printing over there as opposed to just these notional numbers, which can get a little bit weird sometimes. If you're wondering, daily volume-wise, we were talking about 592 million on the 1st of December, 750 million on November 26th. That was a big day. That was the high at the time. So we've just been blowing through new highs at a regular pace, and now it's north of 1 billion in terms of notional volume out there. In terms of OI by month, where they line up by expiration out there right now, even though CryptoX quarterly, Deece is off the board, March is still a little bit far away. So Jan is leading the dance with about 76,000 contracts open right now. So a lot of interest. And actually, that's just the regular Jan expiration. If you add up all the weeklies, it's actually a lot more than that. March is a distant number 2 with about 36,000. It's coming on, but it's got a little bit of a ways to go. In terms of where the action is from a strike perspective, has the huge move above 30,000 up to 34,000 and back down to about 31,000 now. Has that changed things? Have a lot of aggregate OI maybe on some different strikes? The answer is no. It's still the 36,000 strike, but that strike, I'm just laughing now because we were laughing at that trade not too long ago, and now it was over the weekend, it was almost the at-the-money strike. That's insanity. This might have to be up. And those are still open. There's still, let's see, about 22,000 contracts open on that strike. So in terms of, again, there's something against that, so we don't know exactly what that is. But from a pure options, just this position perspective, that's been a huge winner. That's enormous. And the fact that they still have it on is stunning, and yet they've been right so far. So who am I to judge here? The 20,000 strike, number 2, with 16,000 contracts open. And then the 52,000 strike, number 3, listeners, with 11,000. And most of that is in Jan. So probably could hit the 36,000. I could do that tomorrow, the way it's moving. 52,000, probably, even for Bitcoin, that's probably a bridge too far. But still, just insanity what we're seeing out there. In terms of the options over there on CME, not a lot of activity, because as you note from what I just talked about on DEREBIT, most of this activity was going up over the weekend. CME not open over the weekend. Of course, they were closed on Friday for the New Year's holiday. So we saw a pretty anemic week from a Bitcoin options front over there at CME. Only 27 contracts on Thursday, 166 on Wednesday, 94 on Tuesday. The big day was Monday of the 184 contracts. Remember, that's a 5X contract, but still not a lot of paper going up there. Futures, similar story, a little bit more paper to be found out there. Not much on Thursday, 6,000. Wednesday, 15,000. Tuesday, 9,000. And Monday, about 19,000. The BAKKT volume bot not reporting a lot of paper over there in BAKKT land either. 1,446 contracts. That's down 56%, according to their analysis. So again, the BAKKT volume front struggling a little bit. But what's not struggling, though, is the altcoin universe. So let's just get right into it.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we break down everything outside of Bitcoin, except right now when we're going to talk about the top 10. That's been moving and shaking a little bit, so let's get into that. Number 10, Chainlink. Remember, standard caveat applies. Overall market caps, take them with a tasty, juicy, sizable grain of salt. But the relevance of the rankings, I think, is interesting. Number 10, Chainlink at about, 5.3 billion overall market cap. Number 9, Binance Coin, 5.7. Number 8, Cardano. 6.6 billion out there. Number 7, Bitcoin Cash, 7.4 billion. Number 6, Polkadot, 8, almost 8.5 billion. Number 5, Litecoin, back in the top 5 there, 10, just a little bit north of 10 billion. And then we got number 4, you know what it is, it's XRP, 10.5 billion. They've been dealing with some issues of late, shall we say. The SEC looking hard at them, whether that was an illegal securities issuing there. So it's been getting drubbed. Of course, it's up a little bit in the last 24 hours, so up about 2.5%, but it's down 20% just on the last week or so, and it's about 23.3 cents out there. It's good for about 10.5 billion from a market cap perspective. That means number 3 is back to Tether at about 21.8 billion. Numero dos, you know what it is. ETH north of 100 billion now, 115 billion. I take that back. So it wasn't that long ago we were talking about 300 some odd billion for Bitcoin, and now ETH is at 115 billion. That means Bitcoin, of course, number 1, closing in on 600. We were just laughing at the prospect of Bitcoin being a $1 trillion market cap asset, listeners. And here we are now, 580 million. So who knows what the next week will bring. But it brought a lot of upside for ETH, listeners. We were talking for a while here on the show. All this love for Bitcoin is probably going to translate eventually into some love for people coming into the crypto space, getting lured in by Bitcoin and saying, this thing's kind of pricey. 28,000, 30,000, 34,000 certainly. Maybe what else can I buy out there that I can get some exposure to? ETH obviously going to come on their radar, and that certainly seems to translate into a lot of upside activity over the course of the past week. Last week it was a little bit shy of 750, 741.97. Coming into today's show, 1,014. That puts it up 272 handles from our last show. If you're wondering how that equates to the all-time trajectory of ETH, that's about, a little bit shy of it. The all-time high was 1,400 and change back in January of 2018, so about 3 years ago. So not quite there yet, but not that far away either for all-time high out there. Let's break it down hourly. Again, all these metrics coming at you courtesy of our friends over there in Genesis Volatility Land. 1 hour at the money vol of ETH. It was 86% on our last show. It peaked at about 156. That's some juice, listeners. Actually, this morning. Peaked at 156 this morning, and coming into today's show is about a 133. So a lot of evolution. ETH still on the rampage even today out there. The 30-20 SKEW peaked at about 24.5 on our last show. Coming into today's show was at about 20. The OI out there, remember, Dees dominated the OI for ETH, so there was a lot to make up once that went off the table. And it's starting to fight its way back up there. Let's break down the overall OI first, how it's leaning. And it's about 634,000 contracts open on the calls and about 516,000 contracts open on the puts. So calls not quite as dominant in ETH as they are in, let's say, a Bitcoin out there. Let's look at the hourly OI, see how that evolved over the course of the past week. And that peaked back on Christmas Day, actually, about 1.53 million. Now, remember, we saw about 600,000 contracts on the tape in December. All that went off the board at the end of that month. So there's a huge drop down to about 870,000 by the end of that month. Our last show, it had ticked up to about 1 million, and today it's about 1.3 million. So the ETH OI is ticking up out there, and of course a lot of that on the heels of just a explosive volume week. No matter how you break it down, just insane numbers out there. Not too long ago on the show, we were talking about 100 million worth of notional going up on DEREBIT and ETH, 98 million, 112 million. And those were huge amounts. Those are big numbers. And yet what we saw this past weekend just blew them all away. We saw on the 3rd, so yesterday, 213 million worth of notional. So effectively doubling what we saw not too long ago out there in ETH. And today so far on the tape, 237 million coming at showtime. So probably more than that even now. So today is probably going to be a new record out there in terms of notional volume for overall ETH. Just insane times out there, listeners. Let's see. We did hit that, of course, today with 237 million, and then on the 3rd, 213 million. So, yeah, this shows how much it's evolved recently. We were talking about new highs out there of 139 million. Like that was a big deal not too long ago, and it was until all of a sudden it's been eclipsed by these numbers we're putting up out here today. Let's look at the monthly, how it breaks down from an ETH, from an expiration perspective. And again, this is where we see Crypto Loves the Quarterly in full effect out here, because we're seeing it looks like about 277,000 contracts open in March, and that's the big dog by far. Jan is far behind it. The end of month Jan looks like about 180,000 contracts open, and then the next closest is actually the weekly, expiring this week, with about 160,000 contracts open. So Jan added together has a decent amount of paper, but in terms of the monthly expirations, it's still March. If you're wondering, has this big move impacted the strikes out there at all? Are the different strikes opening up as a result? It's still the 400 and 480 strikes that are dominating the landscape out here. So interesting strike selection, very in the money at this point from a call perspective, and very far out of the money from a put hedging perspective, yet they are number one and number two. 400 strike, 87,000 contracts open. That's the clear number one. Number two, the 480 strike with 71,000 contracts. If you want to get it's a little bit more relevant strike, I don't know, anywhere even close. Let's say the 800 strike right now, only 50,000 contracts open there. So people in ETH are not playing where it's trading right now. They're playing at strikes that are many hundreds of handles away, which is bizarre, I think, to say the least. Let's look. Yeah, again, we broke it down already here. 634,000 of that coming on the call side of the ledger, 516,000 coming on the put side of the ledger. Not much to say really on Ripple. It's down about 5.5 cents from our last show. Bitcoin Cash, though, feeling the love, up about 32.5 from our last show, and Bitcoin SV down 5.87 from our last show. Now it's time, before we wrap it up, let's ask you guys a little bit of the old crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, welcome to the Crypto Questions. This is usually where you guys ask us questions, turning the tables on you guys, kick off the new year here. Just during the show, doing a quick flash poll of the audience to see what you guys think about these explosive new levels out here in the crypto land. Quite simply, we asked you guys, has the recent explosion in Bitcoin and ETH made you more interested in trading cryptocurrencies? This is the flash poll, so it's only going to be up for the length of the show. And it seems like so far our audience is kind of split. We gave you 3 choices: yes, no, and these things are a fad. So I guess you can add no and the fad thing to kind of together. But right now it's pretty evenly split. 48.3% saying yes, you are more interested in trading cryptocurrencies. No, 44.8%. And these things are a fad, 6.9%. You got a little bit of time left to go in this. So if you're listening live, you could dive in there, make your voice heard. But interesting stuff. Our audience obviously still a little bit split on the future of all things crypto. All right, and that's going to do it for this extra special kickoff of the New Year episode for the Crypto Rundown. So much stuff popping off, listeners. We had to do a quick live hit for you. Don't worry, there's more coming in terms of, we're going to do our top 5. We're going to look back a little bit at the hot episodes you guys really liked, the ones that resonated with you for 2020. If you're listening live, stay tuned. You get a dose of that now. Otherwise, you have that hit in the feed sometime over the course of the next week for you. And we'll see you back here next Monday with another episode of the Crypto Rundown.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. This episode is sponsored by Demand Derivatives, a startup futures exchange and clearinghouse trading the world's major assets in a creative new way. You already trade on an exchange. Here is your chance to own one. Before they approach large strategic partners for funding, the pioneering team at Demand Derivatives launched a crowdfunding portal so that regular traders have the chance to buy shares. Learn more and become a part of this revolutionary fintech project now at demandderivatives.com/crowdfunding. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.